What's up, everybody? So yesterday was the very first day of the Parker County Sheriff's Posse Pro Rodeo that I had the honor of being a part of, and I will get to be a part of all the way through this weekend. For those of you who don't know, or who are city folk, or I don't know, you or live under a rock, a rodeo is one of the coolest and oldest Western events that is known to man. It is a combination of fast horses, beer, concerts, and crazy talented people doing amazing events, all for the sake of a buckle, a little piece of metal that holds up our pants. Don't hate the player, hate the game. I don't know what to tell you about it. But I just thought I would share with you guys a little bit of an insight on this, because pro rodeo is one of the only things that's holding the Western community together these days. And back when COVID was, still relevant and a thing that people were using to push propaganda and tyranny down our throats, rodeo was one of the only places in the world where everyone kind of just went about their day like normal. Back in 2020, when I was still in high school, I was competing on the high school rodeo circuit, and I remember no one really wore masks. No one stopped rodeoing. We didn't really halt our lives altogether like everyone else around the world did. And I also found it really interesting that rodeo is still one of the only places or sports that pray before our event, as well as have the procession of the colors. So my job for this rodeo is being on the rodeo flag team, which means we carry the sponsor flags that pay for this rodeo. Now, I don't get to be one of the people who carry the American or Texans. Those are positions for girls who have been on this team for a very long time. And since I am a new member this year, I didn't get that role. But here's just a little taste of what rodeo is like. So there's me and Liberty running sponsor flags, and there is an event called Saddle Bronc. Super cool event. Actually, towards the end of this rodeo, there is a giant circle of death where everybody comes out. All 40-some girls come out carrying sponsor flags. And Liberty was doing amazing the whole night carrying sponsor flags in between events. But this one last thing at the very end, she decided that she was going to try to buck. Barely. It was a crow hop at most, but it was enough to disrupt the circle. And I gotta say, I am humbled by the experience, truly. Anyway, that was what my night was and will be for the next 4 days. But let's get on to more pressing political matters that are going on in the world today. So today, June 6th, is D-Day. I shouldn't have to explain to everybody what D-Day is. So Normandy Beach, storming almost all of the veterans who participated in this atrocity, honestly, have all but almost passed away. And every year, our president is supposed to go to this beach, or it's not really required that they go to that beach, but it is highly encouraged that they perform some kind of respect, anything, just a fragment of any kind of coherency from Joe Biden would be greatly appreciated. But anyway, this video is what's been going viral all morning, and it's because it's supposedly him pooping. Now, I disagree with this, just completely. It looks to me like he was about to sit down, Jill stopped him, and his brain couldn't, process the fact that once you stop sitting, maybe you should, stand back up all the way. And then they sit all the way down. I don't know why this is so viral. This is why I think Republicans and conservatives are really just disingenuous, because of all the things to talk about today, we're talking about, quote, #poopgate. Joe Biden apparently, using that catheter that he wears 24/7 to make sure all that chocolate ice cream doesn't go down his pants. This just is so petty and so stupid. Yet it is so viral right now on Twitter. I mean, look at this tweet alone. 477,000. And this is why I can't take Republicans, conservatives, even libertarians seriously, because we claim to be, the party of, common sense and just, gosh darn it, equality, and we're going to look at both sides equally across the board. And then you go out and you pull stunts like this. Like, quite frankly, I could have gone all day without hearing about this, without having to see it all over Twitter over and over and over again. Like, aren't we above this at this point? It feels like we are just sheep. We are just repeating what we hear. Like, some conservative randomly, like it was probably DC Drano or Cat Turd that started posting this, and then everybody jumps on it and posts about it forever. And you might be thinking to yourself, Savannah, you're literally sitting here posting about it. Yeah, but for a completely different reason. Everybody else is getting on to him about how he's incompetent and incapable and he should go be in a retirement home. I'm saying this is stupid that we're talking about this. Like, literally today is one of the most significant days in military history, and remembering the men and women who died for our freedoms so you could be an idiot. And we're talking about Joe Biden and his catheter. I'm sorry, but I can't get on board with that. I can't. And that being said, I will now be moving on. This week has been kind of a slow news week. So if you guys don't know, June is Pride Month. It's also Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. But going back to the Pride Month thing, there is a bar owner in Idaho who would like to celebrate heterosexual awesomeness month by giving away free beers to anyone who identifies as straight, which I think is just freaking hilarious. There's nothing I truly despise more than seeing every single business logo turn into some form of a rainbow. It truly shows the pandering of the left and the fact that they truly do not have any more talking points. And the only thing that they can even kind of grasp onto is the fact that they can convince the LGBTQ people, plus whatever they are, that they deserve your vote, your dollar, your attention, because they changed their logo to a rainbow 6-colored flag for a month. It's fascinating. This man, you guys can't hear the audio because I'm speaking, but he's talking about the fact that he wants to celebrate, the way that God designed men and women to be. So if you come in there and you're straight, he'll give you a free beer. And the sub captions are on there if you just want to, just read that. I like what he said, though, about this country is ready to stand up and say, hey, enough is enough. And I can't help but just completely agree with this statement. Because, yes, it is true. Once upon a time, women were not treated equal to men, and blacks were not treated equal to whites, or that the gays didn't have as many rights in society as the straight people. But the problem with this argument of that they are oppressed is that it doesn't really happen these days anymore. Like, I hate to break it to all the feminists out there, but there's not a wage gap. Like, there's not a pay gap. You don't make 70 cents on the dollar to men, okay? You have an income gap. Does that comprehend? Does that, click with people's brains? Because just think about this for 2 seconds. If corporations and businesses could get away with paying 70% of what would be considered the proper salary by hiring women, shouldn't all of these big multi-billion, million, Forbes 500 companies only be hiring women if that was true? But they don't. Because that's not true. There's an income gap. Because women, statistically, we work less hours. We have things called a period that make it really freaking obnoxious to have to go do work once a week because our body is just, torturing us because we didn't have a special guest come in there that month, which is just, that's our curse that we have to bear because of even that. That's just dandy. That's just fantastic. Thanks a lot for that. So there's not a wage gap. There's an income gap. And quite frankly, I'm perfectly fine with leaving it like that because 9 to 5 don't appeal to me. Being a girl boss and living out in the city with buses and concrete and all of this gross stuff just doesn't appeal to me. I personally, compound, fuzzy cows, sourdough bread, garden. That's just me. That's just what I want with my life. And that doesn't appeal to a lot of women these days because their excuse or their reasoning is that they don't want to be reliant on a man. And I would say to that, I mean, valid. Quite frankly, looking around at society these days, I would not want to be reliant on a lot of these men too, because they're not men. Usually there's some weird hybrid of a lot of different things, and they have pronouns of them, zers, and they're furries, or they're just straight up not healthy masculine men, and that's not something we're submitting to. Hot take of the day. Hot take of the day. But on the LGBTQ community and how it affects the rest of us, because we talked about women, pay gaps, there's a lot more to that argument, but that's just the first one that comes to mind. But then moving on to the LGBTQ community, you guys can go anywhere. You have your gay bars. You guys can walk around with your genitals out during the whole month of June, call it Pride, and then you get away with it. I can't even tell you how many times I've personally seen like either like body cam footage or like phone footage of discourse between like an officer and a random person about asking the questions that go along the lines of, okay, so this person's allowed to walk around naked in front of my 2-year-old and it's not a crime? Yes. And you're not going to stop that at all? No. And that's about the wrap of that conversation. I don't know if I should be terrified or quite frankly just disgusted, because when it comes to your sexuality and who you want to sleep with, where you want to do it, how you want to do it, you can identify as a penguin for all I freaking care. Knock yourselves out. Please go do it. But closed doors and soundproof walls go a long way. You know, there was a time like the classy gays, okay? And I have had a lot of experience with these people. The conservative ant from TikTok actually is the first one that comes to my mind because he brings up some very valid points about the fact that there was once upon a time where it wasn't your whole personality trait. You just were gay, and the people who were like, you know, were important to you, you actually cared about, you had a relationship with, those people knew your sexual preference. But other than that, like the 5-year-old that just happened to, you know, be outside as a pride parade is coming down the street doesn't need to be like, you know, throwing you $1 bills as you twerk in a man thong, right? Like that seems so outlandish to say. But then you see what pride parades consist of today. Quite frankly, if you want to have a parade and just have it covered in rainbows, knock yourself out. It's when the nudity and the sexual explicit stuff that comes out where I start to question your motives behind the whole situation, right? Because I will say the rainbow flag, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Okay, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, indigo. Sorry. There we go. That flag, that color, that palette pattern, if you will, was originally God's promise to us, the earth, that he would never flood it again. It's not about your pride. I rest my case. I leave it there. I don't really want to talk about that anymore because enough said. That was Jesus's clapback right there. Whatever. But if you want to go out with your pride flag of 6 colors, which is the number of imperfection, just saying. 7 is completion, 6 is imperfection, 666, devil, whatever. I'm just saying. But if you want to go run around with a pride flag in the middle of the street, go for it. Do it, whatever. Wear your rainbow clothes, your pins, your little hats, like your bandanas, your masks. Like, please, knock yourselves out. But when you start taking your clothes off, when you start doing things that you would do in, you know, strip clubs in front of children, I wonder about your sanity, right? I actually saw a video. I mean, we've all seen the videos, right? But it was of a very recent drag performance, and it was solely aimed towards parents bringing their children in so they could learn about the drag queens. And the drag queens weren't wearing really any clothes, right? And that's weird, right? I feel like I'm crazy for saying this because we have just conditioned ourselves so much to just, it's normal. Accept it. Love is love. What are you talking about? You're being a hateful bigot right now, and I'm going to need you to stop. I have nothing against drag queens. Not a zip zilch zero. I've met a handful of them. I mean, you can do eyeliner and makeup better than I ever could. Props to you for being able to paint those canvases the way y'all do. But when your costume consists of like thongs and like sparkly ones at that, and like genitalia like naturally on display, and also there's a show called RuPaul's Drag Race, and essentially of it, he was like the original drag queen. He's like called like the mother of drags, I guess. I've never sat down and watched a full episode, just seen the clips on TikTok, but it's basically where they bring in a bunch of drag queens, and it's like a competition, and they dance and they sing and they do skits and they have their costumes and wardrobes. It's something else, okay? But one of the recent drag queens actually just designed a costume where he made molds of his arms, and then he had his outfit, but his outfit was shirtless, and then these rubber arms were over where his breasts were, and they were surgically cut off, and then the hands were moving with scalpels in them, and then as a purse he was holding a bag of mutilated bloody breasts. And that's not even describing it very graphically, that's just kind of what it was. And it is at that moment I kind of wondered to myself, what are we doing, right? Again, I've met classy drag queens. One of them was Dolly Parton. It certainly was interesting. That's all I'm gonna say. But there was never that moment where I thought, goodness, I feel like I am being like predatorily, you know, my clothes are like being taken off by someone else's eyes, right? So, pride parades, when you're naked, when you're doing sexually explicit stuff to each other on fire trucks going down the street in front of children, when your drag costumes consist of bodily mutations with what you removed in plastic baggies covered in blood dripping out, I just start to wonder, right? I just start to question, what are we doing here? I feel like I'm gonna get taken down for hate speech, but I feel like I really need to bring up these valid questions. Another thing, totally unrelated to the gays, on things that I have lots of questions about right now. Let's move on to Star Wars for a hot minute. So there is a new TV show called Acolyte, which just recently came out. It's new, okay? This thing came out 2 days ago, okay? June 4th, right? And even before June 4th, I'm not gonna lie, my TikTok For You page has been riddled with people talking about how terrible Acolyte was. And all the comments are like, dude, this is getting ripped apart and it hasn't even come out yet. And I'm like, I wonder why. So if you guys are not in the Star Wars fandom community, I don't know, we are these days, a cult, if you will. It was originally owned by George Lucas, the mastermind himself. He's one of us. So it was bought out by Disney, as most things are these days. Disney has been doing what Disney does best, and that is ruining a good thing, okay? By reboots, reimagines, gender swapping, race swapping, or as I like to call it, race baiting, because let's be honest, that's the only reason why they switch white characters for black ones, is because they don't have any originality and they can't find it in themselves to create an actually complex black character, so they're just blackwashing white ones. Hot take of the day, whatever, I don't care. So Disney, you know, does what they do and ruins everything they touch. So there is a director in Star Wars whose name is Kathleen Kennedy. Now, Kathleen Kennedy is very controversial in the Star Wars world, okay? This is not like a conservative Christian saying that she's, you know, controversial. Like, she genuinely, across the board, by most people, is like, gross, all right? And it's because a lot of the movies and the TV shows that she has had a hand in have been utter flops, okay? Disasters. Terrible. The amount of times that we have had box office flops, just Rotten Tomatoes, like, just, it's been awful. It's been awful. That's all I can say. The only good thing that has been coming out of Disney Star Wars is Dave Filoni. He is the man, the myth, the legend, and he is the mastermind behind amazing creative projects like The Clone Wars, Bad Batch, all the animated ones that we know and love. He's responsible for those. Kathleen Kennedy has been responsible for more of the live action stuff. Anyway, Acolyte came out 2 days ago. It's supposed to be a series, and it's been terrible so far. So on Rotten Tomatoes, which we all know is totally truthful, never would skew things towards one direction. On Rotten Tomatoes, The Acolyte is sitting high with critics, earning an approval rating of 93% after debuting its first 2 episodes on Disney+. Meanwhile, audience scores are much lower, sitting at 31%. This officially makes Acolyte Star Wars the lowest audience rating ever on Rotten Tomatoes. Whew. Now, you might be wondering, Savannah, what is so bad about Acolyte? Well, if I could get the freaking audio on YouTube to work right now, I would just let you listen to the interview and then you could tell me why it sucked. But I'm just going to give you a little summary. So, 3 of the main characters from The Acolyte, and I wonder if I can get a picture of him. This man, in particular, he was on an interview talking about how much he loved Star Wars, specifically how the Acolyte TV show is really going to present to us the fact that Darth Vader just truly was like a very evil character, which anybody who's actually seen like the prequels and like the Clone Wars knows that there's actually a lot of complexity in Darth Vader, and it isn't just that he's evil. I mean, yeah, he did turn to the dark side, but it is way more complicated to that. We do not need to get into Star Wars lore right now, but if you are a nerd, you know if you know. Anyway, so he actually goes on to this interview, this actor here in this picture, this dude, he goes on to say that one of like the most pivotal moments was when Darth Vader destroyed the Death Star. What? So the Death Star was his project. Anybody who's watched even a lick of Star Wars knows that Luke, Darth Vader's son, is the one who didn't destroy the Death Star. He blew up the Death Star because he was flying a fighter through that special canal into that one little special spot that we know was supposed to be like an impossible shot. But of course, Luke's going in there being the quote was best fighter pilot in the galaxy, and he made the shot. Classic old Hollywood movie trope, right? These actors know nothing about the fandom. They know nothing about all the lore and the history and the canon behind all of these characters that we know and love. And they get thrown into these new woke movies that Disney is just trying to pump out as fast as possible to squeeze every nickel and dime that they can from us. And then they give us absolute garbage. I wonder if George Lucas ever looks at Star Wars today and goes, that was a terrible idea to sell out. It's terrible. Now you might be like, okay, well that's just one guy making really dumb comments about how, you know, Darth Vader destroyed the Death Star, right? Like clearly his media team just did not prep him, did not train him for this interview. And that's fine, right? We all make a slip of the mistake sometimes. Like I could just be out here saying, you know, when Jar Jar Binks was the president of Coruscant, like it might slip out. It would not. That would not come out of my mouth ever. Okay? Because I actually know a thing or two about a thing or two. But let's give him a benefit of a doubt, right? Like, okay, not everyone is going to be a part of the fandom. And when they get cast for a film, maybe they don't have to be a part of it. And that's totally fine. That's okay. But do your due diligence, because the audiences that are going to be watching you in this want to see that you, at least at the very minimum, appreciate what has been written and given to you and all of the history that came behind or in front of wherever your movie or TV show is supposed to go in the long saga that is Star Wars. So in another interview though, between 2 of the female characters, pictured not below, actually this is one of them in fact, not those 2, but her. So 2 women in Star Wars. Oh, and I wish I'm gonna actually try to bring it up. You won't be able to hear it, but You can at least see it. So in this interview, they were talking about the fact that this is going to be the gayest Star Wars that has ever happened on cinema. And it's going to be amazing. Oh, Acolyte episode. Acolyte. To be honest, I don't freaking like the name. Okay, so these two oh, good lord. Freaking commercial. I don't like you commercials. I don't want to see. I don't want to know what you get. These two ladies. Oh, never mind. It's an interview. It's an interview of an interview. Whatever. So these two actresses, Amandla, honestly, I don't even know who these two ladies are. We're going to call her Stenberg and Headland. I don't know. Quite frankly, I don't really care enough to do this correctly. But these two women in this interview were talking about the fact that it is going to be the gayest Star Wars ever. They literally said, the words came out of their mouth, that everyone knows that C-3PO is gay. That he's a lesbian. He's a droid. Okay? And then they had this weird tangent of them cackling about how R2-D2 totally knew it and they were totally for each other. And I'm just like, no. No. What? See, and this is why most people these days are getting kind of pissed off and annoyed with the LGBTQ community, because we don't care anymore that you're doing it. All right. Just, I don't want to see it. If you don't mind, if you could wear clothes in public, that'd be great. If you could like stop trying to do it around children, also it'd be great. If you could stop asking kids about their preferences and explaining it to them and leaving that to their parents, that would be fantastic too. But then you got to go into the fandoms and you rip it to shreds, and everyone's just kind of like, we go and we pick fandoms and read books and comics and movies and TV series, usually because there's, to some degree, you want to escape a reality, right? For 5 minutes. You're just like, okay, the world sucks. I can't afford to eat. Gas prices are insane. Rent is next to impossible. And I'm probably going to have to like find 7 roommates just to afford it all. So let me just... And you turn on your fandom, right? You can't do that anymore, because now when you turn on your favorite TV shows and movies, it is riddled with politics, with culture, with wokeness. You cannot escape it one bit. In this same interview, these two women were talking about the fact that it angered so many white people. And I can't just help but think, no one cares that this Stenberg chick looks like she's mixed, or that literally this Headland woman is white. I don't care. That is literally the last thing that has crossed my mind when dealing with all this Acolyte stuff and watching it and seeing it on my For You page. Okay, I don't care. What I kind of do care about is the fact that you're ruining canon Star Wars. Okay, you're taking something that was just so uniting to everybody, because we could just all have our little lightsabers and we could just love the stories that George Lucas created for us to just enjoy and escape reality with. And instead, you turn it into this woke, just garbage that gets shoved down your throat 24/7. Nobody cares. Please move on. Stop making your entire identity. This is why I kind of despise the month of June. That and the fact that it's already like 106 degrees and it's like 10 a.m. and I'm already like melting. It's freaking terrible. But this is part of the reason why I despise June. Okay? I don't want to see it. I don't want to know about it. Please don't tell me. Please stop telling the children. And if you possibly could, stay out of the things that we use to try to escape the fact that this exists in the world. Because now we can't go anywhere about it, okay? You guys are like that weird cousin that we literally just can't take anywhere. And it kind of sucks. And that is my daily dose of news today. Because it's a slow day, it's D-Day, it's Star Wars Day, and it's Rodeo Day. And that's what I will be actually leaving for in like the next hour and a half, is going to the rodeo. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all of the things. And we have Patreon now. So it's Real Savannah Lynn. Please go check it out. We'll be releasing content on there if you want like a special sneak peek into my life or just really unhinged stuff. Check it out. We'll also be dropping movie reviews, all the things. I'm trying my best right now, okay? It's hard right now. It's election season. Wait till we get closer to November, then absolutely all hell will break loose. But until then, see y'all next time.